when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Australia's best independent news and opinion radio show, The Daily Australian, with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne.
Hello and welcome to The Daily Australian for this Friday, the 18th of July, and it is episode 136 as we head towards the weekend. Welcome back, Nicola Charles. Big day of news ahead once again.
I'm not awake yet. I don't know how this is going to go. This is a very early one. You'll be getting this early today. Jason, something incredible happened overnight. So, do you know, we talked earlier in the week about my idea about how people could protect themselves from medical tyranny, right? So let's get this out there while my brain is half working on this early morning. So I will share because I may as well, because other people can try this as well. So my idea to protect humanity, all humanity, wherever you're from, wherever you are, any religion, any color, any creed, was that we copyright our DNA. So you get your DNA profile and you copyright your DNA. You're allowed to. It's yours. You own it. Now, copyright laws are really strong. They can't be broken, not in a biosecurity emergency. They're the strongest laws on planet Earth, right? If copyright laws could be broken in a biosecurity threat, it means that we could all own and profit from Hollywood movies and all of that stuff. It's never going to happen. Copyright never changes. Now, yesterday, news broke in Denmark. This is incredible. AI could end up being the savior of humanity, and here's why. The Danish government yesterday just passed a law that because of AI, Danish people can copyright their face for facial recognition, their bodies, and their voice print. This is something I've talked about before. My voiceover agent gets very worried about. They can take your voice and, you know, pretend. People are already taking my videos, putting American accents over them, and they're trying to flog XRP using my videos, but it's an American voice. And people are saying to me, I don't know if this is you. You know what I sound like, so you know it's not me. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. These people that control the world, whoever they are, whoever you think they are, they exist and become wealthy on copyrights and patents. What happens when something terrible happens? All these patents come out for systems and methods of diagnosing coronavirus, systems and methods of tracking people via 5G and all this electronic stuff. These people exist. If you've ever applied for a patent, and I have, you don't hear back from them for 18 months because in that 18 months, they're squirreling away, I believe, in my humble opinion, creating like false history that they or someone else came up with that idea before you. You never get a patent when you apply for one. Oh, so sorry, someone else came up with it before you. Now, one of the things these evil people do, and farmers have been complaining for years and nobody's been talking about it, is they created a genetically modified wheat. Now, these farmers, Bill Gates owns most of the farmland in America. These farmers plant this genetically modified wheat. The wheat then blows in the wind the seeds onto non-GMO farms and non-GMO wheat. Then they get legal letters in the mail saying you have to pay us when you sell your wheat because your non-GMO wheat has been altered. Its DNA has been altered because our GMO'd wheat seed blew onto your farm. Mother Nature blew it into your wheat and you owe us money. Why am I telling you that story? Well, this is going to be an incredible expose on something people call shedding. Because if people try and copyright their DNA, let's say you're unvaccinated, Jason, and it turns out that you can't copyright your DNA because it's been altered and there's a patent on something that's altered you, then you can't do it. You can't copyright your DNA because someone else is already copyrighted gene therapy altering product has entered your system. So this whole thing, in a combination of my idea of copyrighting your DNA and the Danish government's permission now for people to do that to themselves, could expose everything that's going on. Isn't that fascinating, Jason?
Absolutely fascinating. So you copyright your likeness, your face, your voice, your body.
Body. It says, just says body. It's very broad.
And so someone else can't profit off it. If you were to copyright your own DNA, and that's more so that no one can alter it or use it. And so that's the difference. It's an altering rather than using your DNA to make a profit from. So it's a different approach, right?
Yeah. I mean, but in the process of copyrighting your DNA, you would find out. They would know. They should know. They should be able to tell you. And if they can't tell you, if they've been told not to tell you, right, because they wouldn't necessarily want the world to know that, then we could copyright it. So they have a choice. They can either be found out that we've been treated like the wheat, right, where we've been blown onto, we've been shedded onto, and it's altered all of our DNA. I mean, we don't know. We don't know that we're not stupider, weirder, in senile dementia. We don't know what we look like from the outside. Do you know what I mean? If we've all been changed, we may not even be aware that we've all been changed. I mean, something does seem very wrong with humanity to me. You know, I'm seeing it. So I think it's a great way for us to find out. It's sort of like it's a legal precedence what they've done in Denmark, which I find really interesting. So when that broke yesterday, I thought, well, I might as well talk about my idea because it's related.
Look, it's substantial and it's a great result. What do you call it? An unexpected consequence. Which makes a whole lot of difference. So that's certainly starting to add up there. Very, very interesting. Now, there was a story that popped. I haven't included the clip, but it was a girl on one of these vertical things you make in the car videos, and she was talking about a particular another one of these. Maybe it's an AI, maybe it's not, but she was. Her husband was contacted on a phone call from her phone. Well, at least it said it was her phone. Yeah. And her name came up, photograph came up, so it matched what he normally had on a phone. And it was a person at the other end saying that I have kidnapped your wife and I demand this money and you need to pay me via this application. So this person just so happened to have a friend in the FBI and texted this friend and explained what was going on and received an instruction, keep the person talking, etc. So the FBI person was able to contact the lady on her phone and realized that she was where she was meant to be. So anyway, the story was that the ability now that people can mimic your own phone.
Clone. Yes.
And clone one way or another, but to convince a loved one that they are holding you captive. So the way that these people described the best way to deal with this was keep them on the phone, but always keep calm in these crises. And it's always just a scam, but to ask for that person to put your loved one on the telephone to prove that they're there. You need proof of concept, if you will. And of course, this person wasn't able to do it, so stayed on the phone for a period of time. And then the FBI person, they were lucky enough that they had this, but that's the point. So it's just a very, good reminder that when people might be thinking that the story you're saying might be a little bit far away from them, the reality will sink in very quickly when something or someone is cloning or copying your likeness, your voice, your face, and providing a threat. So it is very, very timely that we all now realize that these things can happen. So I just thought that was an appropriate sort of adjunct to that story, because it's frightening just the same. But wouldn't it be something if you could outsmart the system from day one and say, well, this is the line in the sand, you're going to play by these rules. Well, now you're going to have to cough up if you decide to mimic me in any way. And it will be very expensive.
They do this. This is what happens. Because the problem is this whole technology thing that they've brought to us very suddenly. They've clearly had these advanced technologies for maybe 10, 20 years, and they've kept it secret and they've kept it away from us. Now they're rapidly rolling it out and they're trying to trap us and they're trying to put us into these digital prisons, but they're making missteps. And that's how I see this thing that's emerged with the Danish government. This is a misstep because, as I've said for a long time, I said it to Senator Rennick, we need legislation in place to protect us from AI. My voiceover agent is even concerned about it. And we all know that this cloning takes place, right? They cloned Dolly the sheep, right? They've been cloning bank accounts. Somebody cloned my mother's Facebook account, and then that clone contacted me and asked for money, and that's how I realized, oh my God, I'm not talking to my mum, right? So this whole thing, the whole digital world is fraud, right? It's the rollout of criminality. We've got criminality on the streets. It's almost like they're engineering it for our world to turn into the Wild West. Feels like Australia's turning into the Wild West. Crime is going through the roof, and this digital world just aids them. So it's buyer beware. Be careful on social media. Be careful what you believe. If you see me or Jason with American voices or Russian voices or anything else, it's not us. Right? You've got to go direct to the source to find out the truth, which is our Substack or our other accounts.
Yeah, indeed. Well, one of my American friends and colleagues was just reporting yesterday that people are mimicking his voice and using it to send messages to people in the crypto space, which isn't aligned to it all. So the same process yet again. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? That there's such small time crooks just doing anything they possibly can to gain favour. I walked in last night having done an event and came home and sat down in front of the TV. Just happened to flick on YouTube, and it normally populates with certain things of interest. And one of them was Michael Salla, who I've talked about before. He's a professor that got into the whole exopolitics and the alien thing. Anyway, he was talking about Dave Grush and Congressman Eric Burlison from Missouri, and specifically referenced how he said that Burleson confirmed, and I haven't seen this like firsthand, but Michael Salla's up on it, that Donald Trump was aware of certain extraterrestrial species he'd been briefed back in his first term. So where I'm going with this was that that part of the reason why they have stopped disclosure is that Australia, that the world, planet Earth, is still considered primitive, and we're not advanced enough to understand.
I'll say it's primitive.
Extraterrestrial intelligence. So specifically, they named two species. One were these Nordic aliens that look like human beings, but happen to be 300 or a few hundred years and more advanced than us. And also they mentioned grey aliens, which many believe are biological robots, but they are thousands of years more advanced than us. And the idea is that that we are quarantined from any form of disclosure simply because we are primitive in terms of technology, and that it would be considered that some humans would then start worshipping aliens, and that's the wrong approach because of the technological advances. So in other words, there has to be a massive catch-up in technology. And therefore, I ask the question, is this rush to AI, etc., part of that to catch us up in the short term? Because I maintain that if it was there, you could use the AI to catch up on knowledge quickly because you could gather so much. And I wonder if this is the case, because they're thinking that this is why. So that's why we're in such a hurry.
I don't believe that's what's happening because, well, A, I don't believe anything I haven't seen with my own eyes, and I see a lot of bad stuff with my own eyes, which is why I report on it. But B, all of this psychological stuff, right, this MK Ultra, all of this stuff we're going to touch on actually in TDA Taboo, the stuff you have to be subscribed for because it's not for children and it's not for general consumption. All of this psychological stuff has dumbed down humanity. So if they really wanted people to catch up intelligence-wise, a whole swathe of society is being left behind. We're separating. There's two kinds of humans, and I've said for a long time, I mean, let's focus on our species, right? The one we do know about. We are a species, humanity, but within our species, just like dogs, so let's take dogs, within the species of dogs are so many different breeds, from a Chihuahua to my 75-kilo Mastiffs, right? So it's the same for humans. You see it every single day. You know, when you're I was sitting at the traffic lights yesterday, and there was someone in a tiny little car next to me. They had the windows down and they had doof doof rap music on, you know, and it was boom, boom, you know, and all this shouting and stuff going on. And I thought, I would never listen to that. I would never want that permeating my mind constantly from within a vehicle, right? I'd rather listen to classical music or music from the 70s and 80s. That's a different species. We're living very different lives, Jason. And I think it's being done deliberately. I almost think, not so much an IQ test, but I think we're separating the wheat from the chaff, to use another grain story. Do you know what I mean? Something's happening.
Yes.
I think we're being tested, and many, many humans are failing the test.
Well, this is why you would then wonder if there is some sort of back knowledge, therefore, and if they are arguing that one, there's too many people for whatever reason, going way back to Kissinger and up to the modern day. Is this a process of filtration of the human species as much as anything else?
Advanced filtration. Yeah.
And is that also why there is a push to communism, so that because they know that it's a failing system, it looks good on the surface to those without, but those without will suffer the most in the process of thinking that there's something in there. Is this a driven cull one way or another of the human species? And of course, you need transparency to get to the bottom of it. You need to be able to bring it up. But of course, the same people that will be the victims of it will be in total denial because they're dependent on the system. It's the whole point of UBI, universal basic income. The moment that you introduce that, it can only last one generation because it has to bankrupt the system that's using it in the first place. I mean, the NDIS is the perfect example. It cannot be sustainable. At some point, it stops.
I know young people. I know a couple of young people, right, that are known distantly to me. And they have been, because of social media, again, this is all orchestrated because of social media and you know, the notion of a universal basic income. They believe that they can go into enormous debt and all of their debt will be forgiven, because this is the kind of debt they're never going to be able to pay off unless they inherit a house or something. They're never going to be able to pay off this debt because they believe all debt is going to be wiped. And this is why they brought out that system of afterpay, I believe. I mean, who does that? Who even allows lawfully the concept of afterpay? You're asking people who can never pay this debt to go into debt. And I always thought there was a criteria, right, to get a credit card, to get a loan, to get a mortgage. People who could never get a mortgage because they don't even have a job are just tick, and they're given afterpay and they're allowed to get into debt 20, 30, 40,000. And young people are going out buying clothes and new phones and all this stuff because they're like, oh, it's not going to matter. Klaus Schwab said all the debt is going to be wiped. They're doing something to these people that they believe this stuff, Jason.
Well, many people have thought, even if they weren't, isn't it funny that they would go down the you'll own nothing and be happy, so let's spend up now, like Klaus Schwab as the savior, versus the other people on the other side waiting for a Jassara debt reset, debt jubilee as another reason. And people have asked me in the past, does that mean I should rack up a bit of a debt because it's going to be wiped? And I say, no, on the contrary. What you want to do is get in control of your debt at this point, because if that thing were to backfire, the massive advantage is while the sheep are going one direction, spending up, you are taking control and creating financial discipline. That it doesn't sound intuitive, but it actually is, because the process of getting down your debt and cutting expenditure and becoming financially savvy at a very micro level, you just get better skills, and then you start identifying better opportunities, etc. Little things to make money. You don't have to save $100,000 to buy a property to make money. You can invest a little bit of money, buy a silver coin, a kilogram of silver bullion still $2,000
Yes,
or less. It's
silver's going
something,
up.
and it does well. I mean, people are investing in cryptocurrencies. You can invest in overseas property. There's so many different things that you can do. And look, there was a time during COVID that everyone became a vintage car collector, for goodness sake, because there was no supply of new cars. It didn't matter what you bought, it went up. People were buying caravans one week for $8,000 and selling the next week for $11,000, and the next week they were $15,000. And good luck to you if you could do that. But of course now things have gone the other way. So it's horses for courses. It's an understanding, but to think that just normal consumption and spending more than you're earning is you're going to be saved, it doesn't quite work.
But it's a psyop, Jason, that's worked, right? It's a psyop.
Yes.
When we looked at that, when I looked at that, I removed all debt. I made sure that there was no debt because I thought, hang on, being beholden to these banks is not a good idea. So most of the same people rallied to remove all debt. And yet there's this whole portion, a different breed in society who are now willfully getting into debt. And what will happen? It's a psyop. They will destroy these people. They will bankrupt these people. And then what does that create? That creates an underclass. And I really feel they're doing that to us.
Well, yes, and when you go through these periods at least in Australia and Social Security, and then there was this whole robo-debt situation, and so what happened was that people were being asked to predict their income for the future, and if they under-predicted, they were given a certain amount of money, and a year later, then they were told to pay some of it back because they had, they'd under or overestimated. Now, they were defended and it was written off in certain circumstances. But again, this is this idea that you're not responsible for receiving a handout, but telling the government that you're worse off than you are to get more handout. And then when you spend that handout, you look at the government and go, well, actually, you need to write that debt off. That's not very good because certain people, obviously was quite scared. People took their lives. Horrible. But at the same time, should the government be asking to predict certain money? Maybe the other way is the government underpays you, and then at the end of the year, if they've underpaid you, well, then you get a lump sum, and that goes into forced saving. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So if you can live off, $150 a week instead of $200 a week, at the end of the week, if you're $50 better off, you've got $2,500 there saved for you. Wouldn't that be a way? And then you could do something with that. But
everything's a trap. I didn't believe in that robo-debt thing. I thought it was terrible. Everything's a trap, Jason. People are being lured in. Temptation. People talk about this system being satanic. This is what it is. I've spoken before about that story with the banker where he told his son, who was not up for all this banking stuff, it's like when you go hunting, we're hunting these people. They are hunting us to destroy us financially, with health. This is a time when you really need to protect yourselves from these people and insulate. You're insulating yourselves from these people. And some people don't see that, right? They're walking into the light, let's say, and you've got to be more careful. You've got to understand that some very nefarious things are going on.
Well, speaking of banking, there's a horrific story that's popped up about this Christopher McCann, this senior level executive at the Commonwealth Bank.
Shocking.
The original headline, just popping it up here on the screen for you. James McCann, I beg your pardon, former Commonwealth Bank executive charged with procuring underage girls for sex, dies. So this former banking executive, who was only sacked when the charges came out, was facing charges of procuring underage girls for sex at a hotel, has been found dead. Christopher McCann, around 50 years of age. Now, this particular photograph's popped up in the article in Murdoch Press. This is the girl. Chantel Elizabeth West, so she's 18 years of age, has some form of one of these OnlyFans accounts, etc. There's a link, they're known to each other, and she's being named as well because McCann is using this girl to find underage girls for this.
Well, that's trafficking. So she's like an 18-year-old Ghislaine Maxwell. So that's shocking. I mean, that guy looked completely normal. He's the CEO of a bank. He must have a massive life. He's doing pretty well. And that's what he's doing? Was he married or anything? Do we know?
Yeah, my understanding is yes. And look, I mean, that would explain if this fellow's disappeared into the forest, and one would assume if it's not suspicious, it would assume that it's a suicide, but you don't know any of
Don't know.
the details again. But I tell you what, there would be an enormous amount of shame and embarrassment, and particularly losing an income that must be around the seven figures. These are senior execs. I don't know if he's CEO, but if he, I mean, he'd still be on, megabucks. $1 million
Yeah, but
a
he would
year
have
wouldn't be.
assets. It was something to do with this coming out. He must
Oh,
have
yeah.
felt, if it was suicide, he would have felt that he was facing jail, because these are heinous crimes, that he was not protected. His lawyers probably gave him the bad news, you're going to do time for this. And if it was suicide, and I have my suspicions, then that would be why, because, jail isn't for everyone. Not everyone can survive it. But again, like, we're living in an era where all of this stuff is coming to light. That guy couldn't look any more ordinary if he tried. You'd walk past him in the street. And he's getting involved with young girls like that. If she's like that at 18, then I'd say she seems very sexualized for an 18-year-old. I hazard a guess, potentially there was stuff going on with her when she was underage as well. Not necessarily with him, but you don't just turn 18 and become that way. This is the problem with this OnlyFans, Jason, that they're teaching our girls. Again, it's like the getting into debt thing. They're teaching young girls, and this is hard for me to talk about because I was part of the system when I was a model and an actress, and I did lots of magazine covers. It wasn't online. I didn't get paid any money to do those magazine covers. It was to promote the show I was on, which sounds strange, but it's true. That's how you get people to watch. But this sexual stuff that girls are doing online, we get subscriptions and we get paid for our work. Right, for presenting news, for doing podcasts, for interviewing people. Small amounts, let me add, for putting our content out there. But when your content is, it's prostitution, isn't it? OnlyFans, and you're promoting that to young girls as a way to make a living. What does that say about a society that this is something we're telling our young girls to do? There should literally be, classes in the last year of school telling girls to avoid it. But I hazard a guess there's not.
Well, correct. So what were you doing if you live in a financial system that risk versus reward, or effort versus reward, and people are realizing that they can make more money doing that than holding down a regular job or going to university for 3 or 4 years and trying to get a career? Then this is the problem with society, isn't it? That the value of something in this way, so it's yet another shortcut. It would be no different to people getting involved with, underworld crime, becoming drug mules, for example, thinking that it's a victimless crime, for example. But it's more than that. It's what happens to you as a human being, your involvement with, certain things, etc. But people will say, and this is this permissive culture that goes on, that it's just considered to be normal now. I guess the question is, and depends on relationships, but if your own children were going to go down this pathway, what might you say? Would you have any power to say anything? Or would you hope that you've educated your kids enough that that they wouldn't take such a shortcut, thinking that this is a pathway to anything? And almost as if, when you see a porn star in the old school, the video, thinking that that's some sort of star, but they are celebrated in many different ways, and therefore, so it is society.
Jason, some people think that, it's no different to anything else that goes on in person in society, except it's safer because it's online. Some people do think it's safer, and there is that element, and I do understand that element because there's distance between the screen. Because an ex-boyfriend of mine a long time ago in Australia was part owner in a strip club, and I was fascinated, right? It was just a financial thing, right? Because these strip clubs used to do so well in Melbourne, was invited to be a financial partner. And I went in to see what it was all about. I wanted to know what it was all about. And I met some of the strippers, and they certainly weren't 18. They were well into their 20s, 30s, and one of them was in her 40s. She looked amazing. And she was very nice, very intelligent. She was explaining to me why she was a stripper. Her husband had left her. The divorce was tricky. She had kids in private school, and she wanted to be with them all day. And then when they slept at night, mummy went out to work, and they didn't know what she did. And that's how she earned money and, kept their quality of life. There were all these stories, and they were amazing people. So I'm not saying that prostitution, if that's your choice, is wrong. or something you should be ashamed of. But I think what's happening in society, like everything sexual that happens in society, it seems that we're trying to drag children, or as they say in America, there's publications called this barely legal, right? Barely legal girls, like on the knock of 18, they open an OnlyFans account. I mean, it is the degradation of society. These people really look down on us, and we need to take better care of our young people. We need to educate them better. We need to get them out of schools, is my opinion. Stop wasting their time. Stop propagandizing their mind. There are things you can do with your life, and I wish all of this in the world wasn't going on, and I could start some kind of school, some kind of institute, some kind of body to give girls confidence. You know, I wouldn't want to be like an Oprah Winfrey, but to educate girls, to give them a more promising future, because I think it's really sad that that's going on.
Yeah, certainly is. Now, obviously, this show is going to touch on more details with Epstein, which is related. But before I get there, as we talk about people making a career in front of a camera, this is an interesting story that's popped up. So, Australian production companies may have to pay millions in alleged unpaid super after an ATO ruling. So, it relates to film and TV screenwriters who have prepared a challenge after 2024 ruling that they work for an employer rather than selling a product, and so are due superannuation. This is a big deal because it refers to lots of different productions, named Neighbours and Home and Away, and obviously it relates to films and not just a TV, of course. But the Australian Writers Guild is gearing up for this challenge against the Screen Producers Australia after ruling by the ATO found that screenwriters in most cases were providing a service and not selling a product. And that means that they're in line for the superannuation guarantee. That is a significant amount of money for people that in the entertainment industry are generally paid well, but it works different if you work under an ABN, etc. It's a completely different scenario. Technically, if you take out sick leave and holiday and superannuation, you've got to add on almost 25% to what you're earning. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And I mean, well, this is the end of television. This is the end of drama, because it's only drama that needs writers. I suppose some of these, well, actually, I know for a fact that some of these reality shows are scripted now. So I suppose there's work on that, scripting those. But there is now a lot of creative writers, myself included, that you're unemployed, you're surplus to requirements. We don't create anything wonderful anymore. Even if there's theatre shows on, it's, old productions that have been, rehashed. And I'm not surprised if they understand that moving forward, that they're probably not going to get an income. They're going to try and draw back as much as they can from their past incomes. There is a lot of shoddy stuff that goes on in television with superannuation. It's a different world. So that's going to have to be picked through, and they're going to have to be taken care of. If, they wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't a legal basis. So good luck to you, but also commiserations to the production companies. Run, hide.
Yeah, I know, big money, isn't it, when you think of it? And then, of course, people on decent amounts of money. So, big chunks, the ATO there.
Very decent.
Yeah. So you wonder how that's going to be sort of negotiated out, because if production companies are forced to go broke one way or another.
They'll make offers. They'll just make offers. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Now, in other news, OpenAI has launched a personal assistant capable of controlling files and web browsers. This AI agent can find restaurant reservations and go shopping for users. But OpenAI acknowledges there are more risks. So that again, this is this development and the pace of what is going on here. So it seems that they are in an absolute mad rush to saturate the market with all of these ideas. And we're hearing that Mark Zuckerberg is so desperate that he's housing equipment under makeshift tents, big tents, high tops, to in a rush to get all this equipment out there. And so it's a lot of computer power.
Well, no Iron Dome over his technology. That's good to know if you're on Meta, that your information is being housed under a tent. That makes total sense for me, because he's so shonky, that Mark Zuckerberg.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that they're saying that you can have an AI assistant to sort your files and your life without asking, in fact, always denying permissions. They already do that with me, particularly with Substack. We get so many views and so many messages that my Gmail account, and I know you're all going to scream at the screen and go, don't have a Gmail account. I don't do anything suspicious on my Gmail account. ASIO, the CIA, MI5, Mossad Go in and have a look. There's nothing suspicious on my Gmail account. But this AI assistant is already sorting my files because there are so many messages from Substack that it puts it under a little orange button. And instead of showing them all, because it would take ages to go through, it says your little assistant has put 99 messages in one blob. And I'm like, I didn't ask them to do that. So I don't even know if you need to engage these assistants. They're working anyway.
Yeah, well, that's right. And then you get a new thing that pops up that says AI to help you write your email. It's just there.
Finishes your sentences. It's like having an annoying spouse.
Or in some cases, people will go, we complete each other's sentences. So, but then you hear of people, already having relationships with their AIs.
Oh, no, stop. No, it's not healthy.
I know, exactly. But again, the same thing. So, and then if you went the AI chip in your head, so hang on a second, you're having a relationship with the chip in your head, or you're using the chip in. Yeah, I know. It is quite odd. Look, in other news, a Chicago hospital has joined the list pausing hormonal care for under 18s. So Rush University Medical Center is pausing the care for new patients under the age of 18. It's the latest Chicago hospital to roll back gender-affirming care for minors after the White House threatened to cut off federal funding. Now, speaking of cutting off
Hang on, before we move on, one comment
Yep.
on that. One comment on that. I've said it before, but I'll say it again in brief. If you happen to be watching this or you have a young person who's questioning this, the reason I don't agree with this for children, right? You're not developed. None of us are developed until we're 21. Life is a weird thing. You're going uphill until 21, and then after 21, you're on decline, which is so sad because it's very young. A little boy doesn't know that he doesn't want to be a man because he hasn't been a man yet. Be a man before you decide, I don't want to be a man. You don't know that it could be quite wonderful. And my husband thinks it is wonderful. So you don't know. Experience it first. If you're a little girl, you don't know that you don't want to be a woman because you haven't been a woman yet. You can't possibly reject something that you haven't experienced yet. So just hang on, wait till you're past 18 and then knock yourself out. You can do what you want.
Yeah. Good. Patience is a virtue, right?
Yeah.
Just take your time. Well, speaking of other cuts, it's just been passed today in the Senate in the US. The Rescission Act has passed 51-48. What that means is that PBS, NPR, and USAID are all now officially defunded. So no more money for public television, USAID and NPR. So that's moving along. That is a big one there. So
that's Elmo's fault. Elmo was pushing the jabs and Elmo was propagandizing children and it was awful. PBS, you should be ashamed of yourself. PBS was great when I lived in America with my kids. It was fantastic. And then after I left, it took a very dark turn. And if you can be a captured public service organization like that, you deserve everything you get.
Yeah, well, there you go. Now, look, let's cross over to the UK briefly. This is disturbing news from Keir Starmer, who has announced that under 18s, now the voting age will be lowered to 16. Take a look.
I think it's really important that 16 and 17-year-olds have the vote because they're old enough to go out to work. They're old enough to pay taxes, so to pay in. And I think if you pay in, you should have the opportunity to say what you want your money spent on, which way the government should go. So I'm really pleased that we're able to bring more young people into our democracy and give them the chance to have a say over how their taxes are going to be paid and what they're going to be used for.
He doesn't believe what he's saying. I know that for a fact. I can see it in his face. Keir Starmer is the former Crown prosecutor, right? So Keir Starmer has spent a lifetime in law separating for procedural reasons and reasons of conviction those who are under 18 and those who are over 18. So Keir Starmer knows and understands that anyone under 18 is a child. I've got a 17-year-old who's turning 18 in a month and she's still a child. right? And even though when she clicks over 18, she can go and have a cocktail, he knows full well that 16, this is related to the OnlyFans stuff and Epstein and everything we were saying, Jason. This guy who's disappeared into the forest and died. This is the dragging of children into the adult world. We are a sick species. Well, some of us, breeds within our species, are sick, and they are dragging children into things they can't possibly understand. But that's what they want, because they've realized that 16 and 17-year-olds, thanks to social media, are easily propagandized. I said a couple of weeks ago that my children included, they were all propagandized at 16 and 17 that dolphins are going around raping humans. And the children believed it. You've got to stay away from dolphins. It was like a beta test. And they all believe that dolphins are going around raping children. Now, in Australia, we've got the under 16 social media ban about to kick in, right? The end of the year, beginning of next year. So under 16s are banned from social media. 16 and 17-year-olds are allowed to vote. So there's a very short window of capture that they're going to get them when their minds are fragile.
Well, we both have 17-year-olds. My bloke is at trade school, and during the election campaign, there was some announcement, and he came home and he said, I might be on TV tonight. And we go, why is that? We go, why is that? He said, some bald guy rocked up with all these cameras. We go, what are you talking about? And we had a look at the email. Peter Dutton was there for a campaign visit. But some bald guy. That's how far my 17-year-old understood the federal election campaign between Albanese and Peter Dutton, and his total take on it, with his own father involved in politics and news, etc., was some bald guy. That's the detachment. No idea what was going on. And he's 17.
Would you like me to make your son rich?
Well, he would be interested, that's for sure.
Did he sign a release document to appear on the news?
I think they did, yeah.
Well, if he signed a release document, it's fine. But if he didn't and they put him on the news.
Yeah. And I don't even think he was actually on, but that was the story. But I was just, we thought it was hilarious that like with all of that going on, absolutely no interest, no idea. And he's 17 and he's working. And he's at trade school.
I know he's working, but he's still a kid, right? They're still kids.
This is the point. He's not anywhere near ready for voting, and he turns 18 next week, actually.
Oh yeah,
and he's not ready. Nowhere near it. But he's a responsible driver, and he works very hard and does all that stuff. But politically, he's got no interest.
Because parents know. So this is the thing, right? I saw a great clip. I think I sent it to you. We should have used it on the show. And it was a guy, it was such a fantastic clip. Well, maybe we'll find it for next week. And he said, if you hand your children to Caesar, don't expect them not to come back as a Roman. Because most parents, you're sending your kids off to school every day. They're propagandizing them. We know they are, because dolphins are going around raping humans, right? And then what happens is you come home and they have dinner with you, and then they have to go off and do their homework. So the government, the state, is raising your children, and that's what they've always wanted to do. There's documents going back on this 60, 70, 80 years, how it's very important to capture the youth, for the government to capture the youth. And you don't know what's going on in those schools. And it's pretty awful. I've seen that in other children of mine. I mean, I told you I took my daughter out of high school when in 2020, I think it was, the teacher stood in front of her class and said, oh, goody, Donald Trump's got COVID. Let's hope he dies. And I made a complaint to the school. I said, you're preaching hate. Right? These are the lefties, the woke, that go into class and say hate is bad, racism is bad, xenophobia is bad. And then you stand there and preach hate because you hope a US president dies. And I pulled my daughter out of education. So, you've got to be careful with your kids. Don't hand them over. Like he said, give your kids to Caesar. They're coming back Romans.
Yeah, well said. Well, look, before we get into the whole Epstein story and a couple of other stories before we go, I just want to mention for everyone, first of all, thank you again for subscribing and becoming paid subscribers to the Daily Australian. Our $75 annual plan calculates to around 30 cents a show, and you can subscribe at thedailyaustralian.substack.com and obviously help support independent media. And part of that is that you also get access to TDA Unchained Unchained, which is a weekly video that Nicola and I do together, which is for paid subscribers only. And then it will also provide access to a new segment that we are starting to produce, which is independent of our live interview, which will be on Anthony Albanese. That is separate. That's for everyone. But this is a separate subject called TDA Taboo, which is really important, that we are going to touch on subjects that shouldn't really be in the mainstream, but they are things that you are looking for and demanding, and we aim to produce the best quality material, and that will be part of that paid subscription plan. So thanks everyone once again for your support, and you just do that at thedailyaustralian.substack. So continuing on now as we head through towards the end of the week, I want to show you now the next potential New York mayor. He's going to tell you now that private property, nah, don't necessarily need it. Have a look.
My platform is that every single person should have housing. And I think faced with these two options, the system has hundreds of thousands of people unhoused, right? For what? And if there was any system that could guarantee each person housing, whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that people try and play like gotcha games about these kinds of things. And it's like, look, I care more about whether somebody has a home.
This is like, remember when Albanese said on that hit piece on me on the ABC about the voice to Parliament? It's ridiculous. These people are saying things they know are not true. The end of private property in Australia. And what did he do afterwards? Stamp destroyed on everyone's parchment paper title deed. This is what they are moving towards, the abolishment of private property. This is the Club of Rome and the UN.
Well, there is a war, and we talked about it yesterday, and it's the war that is the elites wanting to turn everyone into the cattle class, the poor, and using the poor, the uprising of Marxism against the businesses, the corporations, etc. And that's what it is the workers united can never be defeated. And in essence, if you get it right in the balance, a fair day's work for a fair day's play is the Harvester case, 1907 or 10 or something, and that's where trade unions started. But there is the extreme part of Marxism. Now, this guy is a genuine communist. Like, he calls himself a democratic socialist, but he's 36 years of age, and he thinks he's the first person to come out with it. Now, he's a great speaker, no question, and very commanding when he gets out there. But when you have a class of people that are financial nihilists and some 36-year-old, good-looking, well-spoken chap comes along and is going to become the New York mayor, you are going to get a lot of people going, yeah, I want that. But hang on a second. If everyone gets a house, who gets Mar-a-Lago? Who gets my house? Who gets your house, Nicola? And who gets to live in the shoebox? And who gets to live in the caravan?
The whole thing was a trap. It was a trap to tell people to work and slave their whole lives. Most people I know did two jobs, multiple jobs. I do multiple jobs even now, same. To build something, to do something with their lives or to help their own children. That's usually a motivation for parents. And what they're saying is all of that is going to be taken away and given to people who sat on their ass gaming all day or sat on social media as trolls. By the way, I had a great retort to a troll last night, which I'm always going to use. This guy was writing nasty stuff on my ex, and I get paid from X now based on engagement. So I just wrote under his comment, I get paid every time you comment.
Nice. Thanks for the pay rise.
He's disappeared.
Oh, that's brilliant. Almost like, ka-ching, ka-ching, show me the cash register. Keep commenting, guys.
Going. Knock yourself out.
That is really cool. Look, that again, it comes to a point that the middle class who are being eroded will stand up at some point, and that will be the end of this thing. Will not be able to get over the line.
Well, they're not giving up their private property, are they? Albanese won't be giving up his $4.6 million beach mansion. Bill Gates won't be giving up his, 11-bedroom Seattle mansion. Hillary Clinton won't be giving up her compound. Obama won't be giving up his compound on what's it called where he is? Martha's Vineyard. These people don't give up, right? So what they want is there's no middle class. Just to break it down for you, there's no middle class. What they want is they want the elites and then the working poor. They've actually started putting that phrase into the narrative now, the working poor, which is you've got to go to work, but you're still poor.
Yeah, which is an American thing, because over there with the lack of, certain social security, you've got, you'll have, see 85, 90-year-old people cleaning tables in fast food restaurants to try and
Yeah.
earn a few dollars, which is obviously tragic just the same. But you have a system of opportunity, and you will talk to people in America. I remember traveling there in the 90s and jumping into a cab in Las Vegas, and him asking me, well, what are your plans? And I said, oh, we're going to the Grand Canyon tomorrow. What's it like? He said, I've never been. I said, what do you
Yeah.
mean? The Grand Canyon, it's down the road. I said, how long have you lived in Las Vegas? He said, 20 years. He said,
Yeah.
I'm too busy. I work 7 days a week driving a cab. For 20 years driving a cab, and you can't take a weekend off to go in 20 years to the Grand Canyon, one of the 7 natural wonders in the world, and it's down the road. So
Well-
again, it's this imbalance, right?
This is what I don't understand in Australia, right? And I never understood this, even when the world was normal. By the way, I don't mind working my ass off, but I'm not going to work my ass off to be poor because the elites are taking it to be rich. You work your ass off,
yeah.
you should be able to build yourself up. But I feel, and I still feel the same way about Australia, is Australians, they used to earn all their money, and they'd go to Fiji, they'd go to Bali, they'd go to Europe, they'd go to Vegas, they'd go to New York, they'd go all over the world and explore the world if they could afford it. But they didn't explore within Australia. So I'm still on the page, and have been for the last 30 years. Whenever I get some free time, we go and explore Australia. Right now, it's predominantly Victoria. But there are so many wonderful places. In fact, let me show you the book that my microphone rests on. This is my Bible.
Oh, nice. Yep.
Explore Australia by 4x4. That's who I am.
Fabulous. Now, we are going to get into the Epstein segment ahead of one announcement at the FIFA soccer match recently where Donald Trump attended. Some eagle-eyed observers noticed that Donald Trump had some makeup on his right hand covering something. When he sat down, he had some very heavy-looking legs and ankles. And they were, of course, Trump haters, so they were predicting his demise. But Caroline Levitt has come out today and announced that President Trump has been diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency following reports of swelling in his legs. Per Caroline Levitt, an echocardiogram was also performed and confirmed normal cardiac structure and function. No signs of heart failure, renal impairment, or systemic illness were identified. So that kind of puts a little bit of balance there. So what I'm going to do now is just show you in some graphics what it means for those that may be concerned and thinking what's actually going on. So let's click on this again. So what is chronic venous insufficiency? It occurs when your leg veins don't allow blood to flow back up to your heart. Normally the valves in your veins make sure that blood flows toward your heart, but when these valves don't work well, blood can also flow backwards. This can cause blood to collect or pool in your legs. When not treated, you get pain, swelling, cramps, skin changes, varicose veins, and leg ulcers. Now, chronic venous insufficiency is not a serious health threat, but it can be painful and disabling. Well, it doesn't seem to be slowing down the president. Treatment can be improving blood flow in your leg veins, keeping your legs elevated, medicines to increase the blood flow, such as blood thinners, aspirin, etc. It says medicines that draw excess fluid from the body through the kidneys are not often used, so no diuretics. And it also talks about endovenous laser ablation or radio frequency ablation, therapy. This may be used in the cases more serious. A chemical injected into the veins. The chemical causes scarring in the veins so they can no longer carry blood. Blood then returns to the heart through other veins. And of course, surgery is another option there. So there's plenty of options, but it just explains what's actually going on. I think that's interesting that we present that information in the first case to understand what's going on.
It is also important to note, because this is something when you fly a lot, and people in his position fly a lot, and that was noted after he'd flown to, I think it was Qatar for the FIFA soccer. Flying does this, right? There's DVT, which is deep vein thrombosis, which can occur when you do a lot of long haul flights. And I used to fly a lot, even when I was young in my 20s as a model and an actress. And, you know, they provide these flight socks for this exact reason, because it can cause problems with your veins. So it's probably happening because he's older. He's not a young guy, Trump. But it you know, that vein issue is very much particular to people who fly a lot, and he'd just flown a long haul flight. So, well, eagle-eyed people looking out for anything. It didn't matter when Hillary Clinton literally fainted getting into a people mover. That didn't happen. Don't believe your lying eyes.
Yeah, exactly right. Or Joe Biden falling off the stage, falling over. That didn't matter either. He was in
Talking gibberish.
Perfect health. So, what we've seen with the Epstein story now is that it's gone to the next level as predicted and expected. So the Democrats are literally losing their minds, and it also includes Mike Pence, who has chimed in as well. So we have seen or hearing calls from Mike Pence for release, Hakeem Jeffries, Jamie Raskin, and what's interesting
That's getting
is
suspicious now. For them to all come out, Mike Pence we know is a bit dodgy, right? He's deep state. For them to all come out about an issue like this is now making me believe they did alter those lists. Because why are they so excited for it to be released? Because it's a project of theirs, perhaps.
Well, absolutely. And of course, it's who questions who, which makes it interesting. So I am no fan of Joe Scarborough. And here he is in a short clip with Jamie Raskin. And Raskin can't really get a grip on it when he's asked a very pointed and appropriate question.
State congressman, you could have gotten that from 21 to 25 when Democrats controlled the DOJ. Why? It was a crisis then. It's a crisis now. Why didn't Democrats call for it from 21 to 25?
So, I mean, you'd have to go back and look specifically at particular prosecutorial decisions and what was taking place in terms of the other cases. So I don't know. We could try to reconstruct that record. But the point is that Donald Trump is the one who has led the crusade to say that that Epstein, who was his very close friend, and there's all kinds of pictures of them.
Nowhere.
Well, that's a gotcha moment if ever I've seen it. Yeah, if this is so important, why didn't you do it when Joe Biden was in office?
Absolutely, and this is the point. So let's go to Mike Pence.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Yeah, let's have a look what he has to say. And the reason that, I'm certainly not a fan of Mike Pence. January 6th, of course, was told by John Eastman, who I recently spoke to and interviewed, that he didn't have to certify, but of course he did. So let's go to deep state. Mike Pence.
President Trump said the Jeffrey Epstein matter is a hoax. Last week, his Justice Department said there were more than 1,000 victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Last summer, Trump said he was open to declassifying all the relevant files and the Epstein client list, and that his suicide looked suspicious. How can all those things be true and it be a hoax? I don't understand where things stand with all this.
I think the time has come for the administration to release all of the files regarding Jeffrey Epstein's investigation and prosecution. It's important that we protect the names of the victims. They should be excluded from any disclosure. But whether or not the facts justify charges, I think that anyone who participated or was associated with this despicable man ought to be held up to public scrutiny.
One of the most aggressive investigative reporters in our country, Julie K. Brown, was on my show last night, and she said when the Justice Department last week said 1,000 victims, she said that was a higher number than she was familiar with and indicated to her that there have to be accomplices. Accomplices that some of the victims have named that worked with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And she said, shouldn't there be some inquiry into whether or not those people should be exposed to criminal prosecution? Well, do you agree with that?
I just think we ought to get the facts to the American people. I mean, I've always believed in transparency.
And when the president says it's all a hoax, what is he talking about?
Well, Jeffrey Epstein's prosecution began during the Bush administration. Continued.
He's blaming it on Democrats.
The Obama years.
It's not a hoax.
I know of no reason why this administration, once the victims' names are protected, should not release all the files on Jeffrey Epstein.
What an insincere man. I don't believe a word he says. He's so schooled. He's got that schooled American politician thing going on. It's interesting that he said the victims' names should be protected, and then they flashed up photographs of all the victims turning up at court.
Yes.
What? That you're putting them in danger doing that, and you just put them on television?
Well, I mean, those faces are fairly well known by now, but you're right. I mean, this is the hypocrisy of it all. Again, now, if Trump had come out and said, "Oh, look, I want the names," and they'd all be silent, like they were for the last many years. When Trump was asked years ago about Bill Clinton, he said, "I think he's got some problems with the island." So he didn't say that for no reason, and you can't go back.
It's only a problem now. It's a problem now. It wasn't a problem when it was their responsibility.
Yep.
They're just bitter and twisted. They always are, Democrats or the left. They're just bitter and twisted that they don't have the controls over the three-letter agencies to be able to release it. But you did have controls over the three-letter agencies, and you didn't release it. So the fact that they've got the nerve to go on national television and go, "Oh, you're not doing your job, you're not releasing," when they didn't either, he could sit there and say, "Well, you didn't either. You didn't do your job either." So he's doing what you did, right? He's doing what you did, and now it's not okay.
Correct. Well, according to a new Quinnipiac poll, 40% of Republican voters approve of how Trump handled the disclosure of information about Epstein, so 60% not approving, but a whopping 83% of Democrats disapprove. The same Democrats that never said a flipping word for the last decade. You hypocritic, horrific, bullshit artist, don't care, it's all about me people. Shame on you. Absolute shame on you. And you're all going to be caught, and you're all going to be caught in a trap, and I love it. But there it is. Now, meanwhile, so Laura Loomer has also weighed in, and she seems to carry a little bit of weight. They call her the conspiracy theorist, Laura Loomer, a frequent close advisor to Trump, called for the appointment of a special counsel to handle the Epstein files investigation. Obviously, it's not a complete hoax, given the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail for 20 years in Florida for her crimes and activities with Epstein, who we know is a convicted sexual predator. So the president was asked via Caroline Leavitt if they would issue a special prosecutor, to which he's saying no. Now, this is a good thing because a special prosecutor adds another year to the outcome. It just takes longer. The information's already there. It's coming to a head. They're calling for it every possible way that they can, and Trump will obviously respond. He's a politician at the end of the day, and he plays 51-49 better than anyone else. So if he's got 80% of the world going against him, he's almost at peak Epstein, and you know that there's something coming, and they are talking about that there are files, there aren't files, there's this, there's that, there's the other. You can rest assured that we will get to the bottom of this, but it'll be something that the world is asking for, whereas before it was only the crazy people that were asking for it. And now 83% of Democrat supporters are disapproving of Trump, saying there's nothing there. So
show us stills of the people whose names we'll know, stills before anything bad happens, stills from videos of them in the room. That's the end of them.
Yep,
but it's also the end. It's also the end of the leverage you have over them, because currently Trump is holding that leverage if he's seen those files, and maybe that's a valuable national security asset. Maybe not releasing the Epstein files because he knows who these people are that are involved in them will help him bring down the deep state. There's that angle as well, because these are deep staters in the videos, right? So he could more successfully control the deep state by holding this over them. It's so layered. It's not as simple as people think.
Well, just quickly before we conclude for the week, if you look back at the timeline, so the Southern District of New York withheld Epstein documents and files from Pam Bondi back when they first started. The Supreme Court unblocked Trump's executive order to begin firing at government agencies. James Comey's daughter, Maureen, gets fired from the Southern District of New York. Trump hints that Comey loyalists doctored the Epstein files. If that's not a shadow war, I don't know what is, but it is tit for tat. And when your supporters are now, because there's political leverage in calling it out, and this is how you snook at them, it is a masterful game being played of cat and mouse that the likes we've never seen before. And this fellow, complete with his insufficient veins in his legs, is still fighting these bastards every single day. So it's very exciting. And it's been another big week once again. Thanks, everyone, for following along, for commenting, for liking, for supporting. And obviously there's been coming free subscribers and paid subscribers. Makes such a difference as the Daily Australian continues to grow and expand and cover new ground. We are delighted to be able to provide this service to you. Have a great weekend.
You too, Jason. Jason's doing some emceeing and speaking this weekend, so good luck with that in Queensland. Thank you so much for supporting us on the Daily Australian and watching this week. Have a fantastic weekend. We will do this all over again for a bumper episode on Tuesday. We're all having Monday off. I know it's not a national holiday, but we will have a big episode for you next Tuesday.